I was just going to say that I don't think a lot of people, including myself up until today, realize just how little benefit like we get, and we take all the risk, and we're subsidizing this thing. And I think the message isn't out there in the media.
Yeah.
You know, to let people know that, you know, that 80% thing you said. I mean, the way the news has been, you know, the media kind of, and Chevron too, they make it sound as though that, you know, they're going to get all this oil, and there's going to be way more jobs for Chevron. And that doesn't seem to be the case. And I think that's an issue that needs to be put out there in a big way, because I think that'll change minds.
Absolutely.
You know who's the best messenger for that?
Well, me. I'm going to be telling everybody I know.
I just add one thing there. Last November, I called every single household in this riding, and I asked them, you know, I told a little bit about the Kinder Morgan project, and I said, do you approve of this expansion? Do you want to keep things the way they are? Do you want to get rid of it altogether? And basically, I found out about 75% at that point, and I called all of those 50,000 households. I had 4,500 people respond to my survey, which the company that I talked to that does this work said, we never get that much. And 75% of folks in this riding were against it. I had a little fun, and I called into a conservative riding in Kamloops, and it was about a 50-50 split. So I mean, it's just the feeling that, you know, you guys are in this room, and I look at you and I multiply by 100 just in my own riding, and I think if I think of British Columbia, I really think it's out there, and I'm getting the feedback, and I think it's just a matter of a little bit of activation on your behalf, and all of a sudden it takes off. And
It's a majority issue.
Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah.
Right, because I mean, their safety programs are not going to be adequate. We all know that. We can see what's happening around the continent, the leaks that we are trying to deal with. It's just, we need to find a way that we can make this project unattractive to people who are going to stand to get rich from it.
I just want to say, I think often we get too bogged down in the processes. Like if you look at the history of pretty much every campaign that's been won in British Columbia, it wasn't an environmental assessment process ultimately that stopped it. In fact, it's pretty rare that the provincial or federal process has actually said no to anything. Usually it just puts extra conditions and costs on it. And you know, it often is just basically overwhelming public opposition that forces companies or governments to walk away from projects. And I can tell you every project that was worth fighting, you know, big project with a multi-million-dollar company on the other side, and usually the support of government, you know, there was people in a room having conversations like this one, and usually people saying, how on heck are we ever going to stand up to this overwhelming power coming from government and coming from big corporations? And you know, it's really just up to the people of BC to decide what they want. And I think this Kinder Morgan project, it's important to remember they haven't even filed with the NEB, and they've said they're not going to do so until 2014. They filed for a tolling application, basically negotiating how much they're going to compensate people before they even have approval or a routing map. You know, so I mean, we're at a very early stage, really, of where this project is at, or like where the Enbridge pipeline was a couple of years ago. But there's all the momentum of opposition to tankers off the coast, all the momentum of opposition to the Keystone pipeline and the Enbridge pipeline, which I think will actually get us up to a pretty good head start in this campaign, like in the sense that there's already a lot of awareness. Probably the biggest challenge we have in some ways is that people are confusing the projects. You know, a lot of people, you know, come up to me and talk. They say, I'm very concerned about Kinder Morgan, and then they tell me a bunch of facts about
The Great Bear.
So I mean, I think that's actually one of the bigger challenges we have of figuring out how to communicate about both of these projects simultaneously and showing sort of how they're similar and different, and that there's unity to sort of this opposition.
I just wanted to add about this idea that the province has given away its power because it hasn't. It's a joint jurisdiction between the federal and provincial government constitutionally, and so what you can do is agree that the federal government looks after the process, but the process has been changed so radically in the last budget that it's going to be almost impossible for the province to say, oh, that's okay with us now. So I think and the thing is, I talk to National Energy Board quite often on this, and they're not even sure how it's going to hit the ground. Even the top person doing oil and pipelines, you know, that person in charge says, we're still waiting to see how this is going to hit. And I think once the province is through, they'll probably have to reassess, and it can be done very quickly. They can withdraw, and the biggest component of it will probably be First Nations consultation, which they can't just railroad. I mean, constitutionally they can't. So there is hope for the formal process, especially if the Conservatives want one project, one process. I think on this one they may get two processes. And it's not supposed to start construction for another 3 years. So I mean, we're very early in this process, and that we have this many people talking about it this early, I think is a fantastic sign. Really. So that's what I think.
When the Enbridge campaign started in 2006, their start date was 2008. So, and the opposition wasn't as strong, like I said, it was a living room of 15 people. Look at the possibility that we've got here. I think that it's premature to say that the province can't be brought on side, and that we can't all assert our place, and stand up for our coast and our rivers, and that's what we elect these people to do. and I encourage everybody to just feel empowered to do it.
I was just going to say, is there anybody here from the press? You can't assume that you're going to get the press. You can't assume you're going to have an objective press. You're going to have to find ways of getting things in the press. My daughter lives down here, and the pipeline is 50 feet from her townhouse. This should be taken up with the condo board so that everybody in your condo knows about it. You should write to your school if it's along the pipeline or your community center. My granddaughter goes to this school, and the pipeline runs right outside this building we're sitting in right now. Write to the school, find out if they have an evacuation plan, and if they don't, phone the press, because they'll come if it's something that they can make people look bad. They'll come down and make sure the school is on the 6 o'clock news, and they'll be on their back because they're not doing something. But if you look at it in terms of economics, it's hard to get the press to go against anything that they see is an economic benefit. And you have to realize the press, the whole press, our whole media has been brought up by a big conglomerate. There's very little objectivity. They are told what to go out and look at. They're told what stories are stories. And if you want to get it in the press, you've got to think of it very ways that are just going to bring them in. And I think everybody in this room has got some good ideas about how to bring the press in and looking at stories. But if you sit down with your condo board, or if you're going out with the girls for a night, for a couple of beers, or you can talk about it there and ask them if they're doing anything, that you're concerned about your kids or your grandkids being on this pipeline. How are you going to get all these children out of this school if that pipeline breaks and it takes the jet fuel pipeline that's right next to it with it? You're going to have this tar with jet fuel on top of it, and you're going to have all these kids. How are you going to get them out of school? They can't come out. The toxic gas is going to be outside.
Community efforts. So what we are doing is the little map that I have there, and I also brought people on and got the pipeline route as it goes through. It's been in the paper and stuff, but actually we drew that with the right-of-way to scale. So the yellow, you can't quite see it from here, but the yellow line in the middle is the right-of-way that Kinder Morgan has, but then there's a safety zone on either side. So what we're doing is we've actually generated 13 neighborhood maps that zoom right down to the neighborhood, so you can see all the streets with the pipeline, what will actually be dug up, essentially drawn to scale. Those are going to be mailed to every single household in those areas with more information. So this will kind of continue on as we go. What I can say is the local press on this one, I know that both the News Leader and the Burnaby Now, this is their top story. Like I notice there's like a story every week about this thing, and they see this as their thing. What I do get is the national press calling me, and they say the first place they start is the local press. They read Wanda Chow or Jennifer Moreau, and so this is coming. I know the Globe and Mail is coming out next week to do a big Saturday afternoon, the Saturday issue 2-page spread about this. So it is picking up, just that we've been working on it for a while. So you think, oh, nobody's ever going to listen, but then we have a room full of 50 people come out and think, oh, maybe other people are listening. So it is getting there. But I do think it's what you say is important, and we'll just continue. But that it's such a big project for a city that really is very well municipally governed. There's lots of consultation. They would never think of doing something like this. I don't think locally, they're against it. vehemently, but it's such a big thing that it's hard to imagine that somebody would do this to us. And I think that's what people are trying to digest.
I just had a couple comments. I heard about getting the facts out. I don't know, many of you probably heard of Bob and Alan, Sheila and Bob.
Sorry, we can't hear.
Oh, sorry, I'm trying to I can talk about getting the facts out, because I've been doing a bit of canvassing, talking to people, and it's true, people don't know what's going on. Like, I tell them, and they're actually shocked. And I think that that's something that we, that needs to be put somewhere where the actual facts, like, what I would like to be able to tell people is how much money how much money is a province really gonna make? Because that's the big thing I hear, is well, it's making millions of dollars to our province. And the thing is, it's just a person, me standing, talking to someone on the street. I don't have university education, why are they gonna accept what I'm telling them? There needs to be some kind of written document, something that any of us can go online, say this is the facts. Because that's what needs to get out there. Because the media, you get two stories. I read the Sun every day. You get one side of this story, and then you hear the other side, that side. But that's what needs to get out there. Like, even the Kinder Morgan meeting we had, that they're gonna build 3 berths in the port here. I mean, that's 3 tankers carrying 550 million or 1,000 barrels of oil going through under those 2 bridges. And I was at Ambleside yesterday. You should see how narrow that is.
Yeah.
And then at first, Kinder Morgan, when they first had their PowerPoint presentation to the shareholders, they talked about dredging the harbor. Well, now at this meeting, he's saying they're not going to dredge the harbor. I doubt that. Then another point I have to make is about pumps. They're going to make this application based on the lowest amount of oil or bitumen coming through these oil pipelines. They can add pumps to these oil pipelines that increase the oil, and they don't have to go through the energy board to increase the amount. Now, these are facts, but you don't read it in the newspaper. You have to, like me, you have to do a lot of investigating, but that's the kind of things. And then I want one more thing I want to say. I hope you don't mind. I just read something this week, because I was getting a bit discouraged about going and talking to people, because I thought maybe the decision's already made. Then I read something this week that totally changed how I feel. The Exxon Valdez spill 23 years ago. There was a pod of orcas that lived in the area. There was 22 in this one pod. When the oil spill happened, 9 died because of the spill. But the saddest part of that is that since then, I guess, I think 7 have died, but they've never had a baby. And I just think that this issue is so much bigger than just our backyard. It's just bigger, like, and that's why this passion needs to get out there, people to really see, like, you know, like in White Rock, that's where I live, you know, the one little humpback whale that died, the emotion that caused, so we have to get people emotionally engaged in this. It's too easy for people to just go on with their lives. It's not going to affect them. And that's all my little thing to say.